Coming up on Smart Tech today, I get a little salty about Sonos and their feels about antitrust concerns. Matthew and I talk about Amazon's Luna cloud gaming platform and its coming launch for Prime members. We talk about Xbox streaming with xCloud, the stuff that Xbox supports in terms of accessibility, and loads more. We've got a lot to cover. We've got some questions to answer. And of course, at the end, we round things out with our picks. So stay tuned.
Podcasts you love
from people you trust.
This is Twit.
This episode of Smart Tech Today is brought to you by Command Line Heroes, a podcast that tells the epic true tales of developers, programmers, hackers, geeks, and open source rebels who are revolutionizing the technology landscape. Search for Command Line Heroes anywhere you listen to podcasts and download it today. Welcome to Smart Tech Today, where we explain the exciting, dynamic, and sometimes confusing subject that is the Internet of Things. I am one of your hosts, Micah Sargent.
And I am Matthew Casanelli. Hello, Micah. How are you doing?
Hello, Matthew. You know, today is a day. That's what I'll say. Ho, ho, hey, hey. I'm trying to be positive, as that is my blood type, because I just sort of I tweeted out my feelings in the moment, and that is just that right now, those of us who live in California, who did everything we possibly could to do the right thing during the pandemic, who normally right now should be feeling some level of relief and happiness about being vaccinated, about California opening up, about us getting to go places and do things, are exchanging the trauma and anxiety and all of the other fun words of the pandemic for the trauma and anxiety of California catching on fire and being on fire and burning forever and always. And it seems like every year I'm here, it gets worse and worse and worse and scarier and scarier. And so I'm just, upset with the overall unfairness of the universe. But as we all know, everything is random and nothing matters. So my upsetness doesn't make a change to that.
All right.
How are you?
Wow, that was a philosophical journey there.
Is that a matter pun?
It should be. It should be. But no, Kevin, I would make puns if I was happy. But right now I'm a little upset.
That's fair. It is extremely warm today, which is always, it's not always a bad sign, but it's particularly, I've noticed just this season has been extra warm already. It's like, what is it, 88 degrees here right now in Berkeley, which is, I don't remember the last time it ever hit 88, or like it only does that 3 times a year, usually late in the year. And this is the very beginning of the summer. So that's definitely
it's
a bit
102
concerning.
Here.
Yeah, exactly. You've got Berkeley is normally
very
like 30
thankful
degrees
I've got,
colder than you. So yeah.
I finally got the AC fixed. And I'm very thankful for that, because otherwise I don't know what I would have done. Cried.
Well, if people are watching the live feed, I don't have my lights on right now because those would generate a lot of heat for this episode, and I don't have AC. So I almost didn't even wear my headphones the normal way because I was not planning for that. But I feel like I've got to get invested in. There's not too many smart home AC units out there that aren't the big honking ones that you stick in one window, and I don't even have those traditional windows. So when are they going to make a personal AC unit? Like I actually have now that I think about it, Smart Tech for sure is a little fan that I plug into my lightning port on my iPhone, and it blows air at me real quick. So yeah, exactly.
It's amazing. That's amazing. I love it. So
great,
see, this is what's good about that is that traditionally, I can remember going to church, and in church, they would give you these they usually had like Jesus's face on them, or like a creepy angel. And it was like this wooden almost like a paint stirrer with this paper. It's like not cardboard, but cardstock with Jesus printed on it. And you would do this and it would, fan your face. But here's the thing about that. You are doing work, you are burning calories as you fan your face. So in the end, the exchange of warmth to coolness that you're actually getting is far less. So having something that's powered like that will help. So that's really funny that you've got. I'll have to remember that the next time I go to a theme park.
Yeah, that's a good one. Although it does use a little battery, but I bet not that much.
All right. Well, that's the first smart thing we're talking about today. Let's get into the rest of the show. Up first, we're talking about Sonos, who I was talking to Matthew a little bit before the show began. And every day I find myself more and more disliking Sonos. So it started when so many of the people I care about in this world I don't own any Sonos products, but so many people in the world that I care about own Sonos products. And they did this horrible thing where they were like, hey, we want to start with some modern devices. So we're going to stop supporting the older models and we're going to deactivate them and have you send them in. And it was bad. And you can go back and learn about that when we talked about it. And Sonos, continued to make some choices that were very troublesome. But this latest thing is Sonos was at an antitrust hearing kind of talking about big players in the space. And they talked about Apple and Siri. And I thought this was interesting. They are not happy with the idea of having Siri on third-party devices, at least not in Apple's implementation of the technology. And what struck me as odd with that is to me, that is an opening up of the technology to more people. So why, and more companies to be able to use it, like Ecobee, who has an Ecobee thermostat, and right now ALEXA works with it. They are releasing a firmware update at some point that's going to bring Siri to the Ecobee thermostat, at which point I'll actually start using it, because right now with ALEXA, I don't use it at all. Because A, I've got better Echo devices, and B, I don't tend to use voice stuff for home automation and whatnot all that often. So let's start with. There's a lot that's in this piece. It's kind of quoting the antitrust hearing in this 9 to 5 Mac article. And it starts with Sonos's chief legal officer talking about how an open platform is what leads to success for Sonos. And so this is why they're saying that, hey, this is an issue where we don't have an open platform. It says Sonos's success is based in significant part on elevating the idea of an open platform, facilitating consumer choice rather than a walled garden experience. And here, let me editorialize for a second. You mean an open platform where you can just turn off your devices and people can't use them anymore? That was editorialization. Sonos customers can choose audio content to play on our systems from more than 100 streaming services, such as all of these different ones. They can also choose between one of the two leading voice assistants, ALEXA and the Google Assistant. And it says, moreover, we provide these services with a strong emphasis on quality. Sorry, that giggle was also editorializing. And privacy, focusing on using customer data to enhance their experience rather than aggressive monetization. So off the top, they're saying basically, if things are open and we have more options, then it is better for the consumer. I agree. I agree with that. I think that is a good thing. They go on to talk about 2 scenarios of the way that they could kind of see things going down this sort of antitrust issue. So it says, in the first scenario, resulting from the current trajectory we're on, every smart home will be controlled by one of a few dominant companies. Google, Amazon, or perhaps Apple or Facebook will squeeze in too. These behemoths will exert overwhelming control over the direction of innovation and what new ideas make it to market, ultimately replicating a market structure that history tells us inhibits innovation and competition. Consumer choice will also wither. Consumers will find themselves channeled into the siloed ecosystems of a Google or an Amazon in a self-reinforcing dynamic of network-fueled dominance. Now, the other option is revamped antitrust law that will broaden the playing field. companies like Sonos and countless others innovate and bring novel experiences to customers. A multitude of companies will compete based on the merits of their products and services, with the best ideas rising to the top. You get greater choice that way, and you can mix and match everything as you want to. And then they basically say, Congress, it's your job to make this happen. So I guess the argument here is that with the smart home going the way that it's going, that somehow Google and Amazon are in control of the smart home. But I want to hear, Matthew, your take on this as a Sonos owner, who I think has a little bit more goodwill towards Sonos than I do. And then also just as a fellow analyst of the, smart home industry.
Yeah, I mean, I love reading just their exact words because it is a very specific angle, and I do think it sort of ignores Matter, which I'll read a quote in a second about what they said, but I do think it makes sense that Google or Sonos specifically was getting squeezed this way as compared to the ones that make their own assistants. And so it is just like, if it is exactly like this path that we have been on, which I think was true. I don't know. I think I was saying to you before that it seems like they're slightly like taking advantage of the current situation and not how things have changed in the last year and a half. Like this quote about Matter is that he says, the standard Matter is working on, as I understand it, is basically a creature of Google and Apple code that is hardly a formula for fair competition. And then it's like, what? That kind of seems like it ignores the reality of what is actually happening there. Mm-hmm. So I find that a little deceiving. Their point about Apple, they do say that Apple will only license Siri to companies that utilize the HomePod as a central hub to connect. And so that is true that you basically at least have to have some sort of other home hub. But then he says Apple is conditioning interoperability with Siri on companies placing a competitive Apple product alongside their own. That's basically true with the HomePod Mini specifically, but it isn't true with Apple TV and iPad, which do serve as home hubs. So like, it's kind of like true if you ignore certain parts of what's going on. And I do think particularly Matter, as we understand it, seems like it'll solve a lot of these problems. So it's kind of like an odd moment for Sonos. Maybe it's part of the nature of these lawsuits happening over time too.
What's interesting to me about this is it does feel like it came a little late, and Matter was announced, and we started to see companies, especially Apple with WWDC, talking about what Matter was going to provide. And at that point, they kind of went, oh, crud. I'm sure that's not the word they used. And of course, this is all just reading and speculation here. I'm not saying that this is what happened, but it feels like they kind of were like, oh, great, that doesn't help our argument. So now we need to make up some hand-wavy thing about why Matter is also bad and why the ability for these companies to do these things is also bad. Because like Belkin is not a huge player in the space, but Belkin will be able to release products that are going to work across this whole interoperative standard. And Matter is an open source technology that like anyone can make stuff that works with it. So I don't understand what this closed off idea is. And if I feel like Sonos is allowed to make its own voice assistant, and then if a person goes and says, I've tried Sonos's voice assistant and it's terrible, then they're going to use the one that they want to use. So
but it's still
nobody's
not about
stopping
the voice.
Sonos from creating. Say again?
I don't think it's as much about the smart assistant as the smart home. Like, it's not about triggering it with voice as opposed to, I think, the locked out ecosystems where you just aren't able to hook these together. And like we do. It's true that currently in the smart home world, we don't have a whole lot of choice because of the way things were in the past. So I think it's like Sonos's argument needs to be updated for Matter. Like the fact that they just said, as I understand it, it's basically a Google thing And it's just like, so you totally don't understand it, or are you like intentionally leaving it out so that Congress won't like it's just like the thing where we're on the cutting edge and we know about this, but the senators aren't going to understand the nuances of matter and what it means until it actually is. And the most
annoying thing about that is that matter is not a creature. It's not. That's so inaccurate. Thread is a creature of Google code through Nest. And I feel like that's what they're talking about. And the lawyer just got them wrong. Matter came out of Z-Wave. And that is its own, like that's its own system. And so really they could be going, they're mentioning Amazon and Google here, but they could also be mentioning Z-Wave, because a lot of the, not the consumer smart home technology, but the builder smart home technology, the stuff where builders who, build houses in different structures, a lot of that stuff uses Z-Wave and Zigbee as, did I say Z-Wave? I meant Zigbee. Anyway, a lot of that stuff uses those old school sort of radio waves and that integration. And so really that's kind of who they should be mentioning here. And just having Siri in more places, because Siri is my voice assistant, is not an issue that I see. And like you and I, who are platform agnostic when it comes to voice, at least, I am happy to have the voices that I have in all the different places. Microsoft is a huge tech behemoth, and they try to, and any of their smart speaker type functionality just wasn't as good. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how much Sonos's argument actually impacts things. But at this point, I'm just kind of upset because I don't feel like this is an argument for, and God, I don't want to start sounding libertarian here. And so I hope that I'm not coming across that way. I don't like the idea of Sonos almost saying these big companies need to not get to make good innovations because we can't match them on that level, or we can't like play the game with them, because they can. That's the whole point of this. Like Sonos could use Matter and could join this organization and be a part of this thing. And like everybody that makes smart home stuff could be a part of this thing. And I guess like Sonos, if you want to make a smartphone and join that party, then by golly, do it. But you've got to, like, I don't know, just because somebody else did it first and did it better, then you think that that's the argument that I'm not understanding. That's like, I cannot grasp what the argument is here. Nobody's locked out. That's what I'm saying. Amazon, especially, like to its detriment, was super open about letting third-party manufacturers be a part of the game and letting them integrate with their stuff. And Apple has over time go ahead.
Well, Google also has the part where like you can't have Google Assistant and another assistant on at the same time, and that's why like the Sonos, you have to switch in between them. You can't use both at and they basically are like, they're basically like, we literally can do this, and Google says that it like won't be a good experience. And so I thought that part was interesting. I do think it. What's hard to tell also is how much, I mean, Matter and Thread have been under development, but I do think Sonos was like strangled before. But I think them, especially the part about like act soon, is like, hurry while this is still true, as opposed to they are almost like self-regulating right now through these through the Matter standard. And so it could maybe in some ways protect like the next wave of innovation. Yeah, I mean, even the end of his quotes are about like entrepreneurship is at risk, and like they go like really far into like, I just don't think their argument holds up as strongly. But I think it's also just relevant because there are like the American Choice and Innovation Act is potentially moving through, which was formerly called the Ending Platform Monopolies Act. You gotta love the just the messaging behind the titles is always so loaded. But there like could actually be regulation, and it is going to be interesting if we kind of like hit that point where they get regulated right as they actually did open up. And I'm curious if that will end up creating, I don't know the term for it. I'm thinking conflicts of interest, but that doesn't really necessarily apply, but just creating like weird situations where they actually did open up, but then there's also now regulation that could like limit even how that works or something like that. So I think it's just an interesting point to take in that Sonos is still like pushing really hard, and it's being heard by US lawmakers like 2 days ago, basically. So it's an ongoing story, basically.
Yep. Well, I'll keep my salty eyes on that one.
I actually did. I didn't actually address that part. I've felt more open to Sonos lately than I was, I think, like a year ago, even. Maybe because the HomePod just totally died. And I think it's like because AirPlay 2 made it fit into the system a little bit better. Or, I mean, we've been talking about last week, and there's one this week too, of just new IKEA speakers that integrate with Sonos. And so I think like IKEA might be one of those examples of a company that can jump into the smart home, but doesn't have a way to like really deeply integrate up until basically Matter comes out. So I think that's kind of like, we're all waiting on it, but Sonos, their business can't wait on it in many ways. So I guess that's why they're so concerned about it.
All right, let's move on to talk about, and one of my devices heard me and thought that I was talking to it. We should talk about Luna. That is Amazon's cloud gaming service. It has now launched for Prime members. So I ended up getting to check out the sort of pre-release version of this. I have a Luna controller, and I played a few games on it and haven't really touched it since. But now that it's releasing to Amazon Prime members, excuse me, it's not out yet. It starts June 21st and June 22nd. So it says that you will be able to sign up and use it for free for a while, for 7 days, and then it'll be $5.99 a month added to your Amazon Prime stuff. But if cloud gaming is of interest to you, this is one of those systems that's well worth a look, especially given the company is the backbone for a lot of the internet, Amazon Web Services. So I think if any company can pull off a streaming gaming platform, they're not in gaming, but they definitely know a thing or two about streaming. So this is at least worth a look, I think, for people who like gaming.
They do own Twitch as well, so I'm curious.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Long run, if that's going to somehow be integrated with this. I do think it doesn't really have a lot of games. Like you can look on Wikipedia and get the whole list, so that's definitely worth considering. I think in general, there's another story too about game streaming, and it is just like Amazon has dipped their toes and is maybe going up to their knees now in the game streaming world. And so it's going to be interesting seeing how just this market competes, because gaming is so big. Like people watching World of Warcraft tournaments and stuff have as much audience as like the Super Bowl sometimes, or I don't know if that's true, but like there's definitely, I mean, it is massive. It's way beyond how much even like Hollywood makes from their stuff, partially because games end up being like $60 or something like that. But it's going to be a train that's not stopping for the next year and a half. Even just the next story is that Microsoft is doing, you'll be able to play Xbox Series X games via xCloud on your Xbox One. So if you
hold on really quickly.
Yeah,
sorry. I know you were ready to talk about that. I just wanted to update. I just logged into my Luna account because I wasn't so sure. There are 87 games that you can play on Luna. So that's quite a few, 87.
That's fair. Which games, though, is part of it? Like, I only recognize like 4 titles from
There are some
Ubisoft
Ubisoft games on here. There's one called A Plague Tale, which my partner played on the Xbox and was a really interesting game. Let me see some names so the problem is game names aren't so familiar to me. So I'm trying to look through to see if there are ones that people would know about. Sonic.
Just a general point is that I am more deep into like console specific games. And so I can recognize my bias that like I wouldn't even know those games, even if they were more popular on like you said, on Xbox or iOS or iPad or Android or something like that. So that's definitely where I can, I gotta hold back my game snobbery too.
There's a game called Obduction, not Abduction, but Obduction. Let's see, sort by Metacritic rating. That might give us a hint. Brothers, the Res Infinite, Iconoclasts. None of these names are sticking out. Shadow Tactics, Control, Observer. Okay. Anyway, there are quite a few games on here. Whether or not you've heard of them is a different thing, it sounds like. But it'll be interesting to see as this becomes available to more if there will be more games added to this. But
that's definitely
let's
come.
Yeah, let's talk about Xbox, because I tell you what, if there's anything to come out of E3 that I've seen, people are loving talking about Xbox's streaming options and xCloud and all of that jazz.
Game Pass,
so go ahead, back to what you were saying. Apologies.
So this feature is Xbox One players will be able to stream Xbox Series X games. And basically, if you have an old console that won't be able to run these new games, select games, I think specifically they mentioned Microsoft Flight Simulator, which does require just like a lot of data. And so you could basically stream from essentially Microsoft's Xbox Series X to your current console that isn't powerful enough to run it. And so I thought this is actually super clever. And even it does give your consoles just a much larger life. So I actually did just get the Series X and replaced what is the Xbox One S, which doesn't go, it goes up to 1440p instead of the 4K that the Xbox One X does, which is the last generation. I hate explaining this. I'm on the Series X, then it was before it was Xbox One X, then it was before that was One S. And so pretty much like before I saw this, I was like, I'm just going to get rid of that Xbox because I have no reason to use it now. But xCloud will stream from somebody else's. I could stream remotely from my own Xbox to another TV on my Xbox and then play there too. So it can kind of open up, especially for just older consoles and stuff that would maybe just go to the landfill or never get used, gives it a second life. And just in general I don't know if I have the exact distinction between xCloud and Game Pass and how some of these new features are rolling out, because they've been doing, it seems like there's something new every week. But there's just in general being able to stream your Xbox games to TVs without requiring the console and stuff like that is part of the strategy too that we've mentioned before. So I think it's just fascinating that what seems like console gaming really does seem limited to the people who are interested in buying those super expensive ones. And now it is kind of like branching out. You might be able to play a lot of Xbox games without even owning the Xbox at all. And then you can, for people who have older consoles, you're not as like forced to upgrade just for 1 or 2 games that you might want to play. So Microsoft is really pushing it. Like, if Amazon's going 5 miles per hour, Microsoft is going like 100 miles per hour, and they just acquired a whole game studio, that Bethesda. I don't think I've regularly said that out loud.
Bethesda,
yeah. Okay. Thanks. That's why I was like, oh wait, Bethesda. But they've got like a bunch of new exclusive games and stuff there. So there is still a competition on that higher end for people, but they're bringing it back out to regular people too a lot more too, which is awesome.
Yeah. Hard for me to quite understand and grasp this, but again, as far as the opening this up to more people and also making it so that folks can can play these games and, interact with these experiences in different places. Always a win, in my opinion. What's next? I see you've got Xbox updating its accessibility.
Yeah, this is cool. So basically, they can do speech to text and text to speech back and forth if you're playing. So essentially, if you don't have a microphone, you could type out something and it could be spoken back to the people on the other side. And if they're speaking and you can't hear or something like that, it could translate it for you automatically in real time. So it's basically just party chat becoming fully accessible for audio, which is, I think, a super important thing that's gotten a lot of attention in the last year, even from services like Clubhouse and Twitter Spaces, because essentially audio platforms aren't accessible to a lot of people in many ways. And having those kind of real-time caption, even TikTok, it became a whole feature of the community to add captions, and now they auto caption, which is really nice. But yeah, that's fascinating. There's even a funny thing is there's this is just in the same story, but there's stories in the Xbox app now. So video games can post like Instagram stories for you. It is like a decent format to keep people engaged in the game, but it's just, I don't know if you've ever been like, oh, they're going to put stories like LinkedIn stories. I'm pretty sure is a thing too. And it's like, do you need video or like timed stories like that all the time? I don't know. But the accessibility thing is really cool. Like, that's awesome just because they've done a lot with the Xbox adaptive controller in the last few years to make it so pretty much anybody can be a gamer is their kind of, I don't know, not their tagline, but their message. And this really reinforces that, which is awesome.
Yes, indeed. And then we spoke about them a little bit earlier. We're speaking about them again, but this time in concert with Ikea. And this is a pretty clever product, I have to say. Ikea, along with Sonos is doing the audio for this device, is releasing something called the SYMFONISK. It's a picture frame that has a built-in speaker. I'm immediately curious if it has a wall mount so that, you would sort of either use some wall anchors or you would find a stud and screw it into the wall to reduce vibration of the speakers, or if the speakers are facing out. I'm curious how that part works. But that aside, the idea of combining these two things is pretty cool, particularly because it doesn't take up as much space on a table or a desk. And then also getting the speakers up in the air like that means better sound, as it's more on the level with your ears, depending on where you're standing or sitting. So I think this is a cool idea. They're supposed to, it says, as the previous SYMFONISK products, the new speaker is also part of the Sonos system, which means listeners can connect to more than 100 streaming services and basically use them like Sonos speakers. Starting from the 15th of July of this year, the picture frame will be available in Ikea stores and on Ikea.com in Europe and North America, with other regions following later on. So next month, in about a month from now, is when this will release. I don't see mention of pricing, so we'll have to wait for that. But Ikea classically has done a pretty good job of keeping these things affordable. These different speakers that they've had, so the SYMFONISK system.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's super interesting. Just the whole, I think this was where I was getting at, where like Sonos is putting those quality speakers into products like this that shouldn't require you to like have a specific type of smart home just to be able to use it. It's hard to tell. Also, I think in the press release, the fourth image shows it with the cover slightly off. And so I am just fascinated how this speaker is built and what it looks like, just in how it exports the audio. What's the term for that? Pushes out the sound, basically, especially like that against the wall too. So that'll be fascinating. I did think, though, the one thing that, I mean, this is just inevitable, but I was like, oh, now you can have a wire coming down from your picture frame. It's like not exactly seamless into the wall, it does start to. So like, I guess maybe if it's built into the wall. Oh, nice. Okay, we do have a video of showing the inside a little bit more too. That's
okay,
cool.
good. So they do fire outward.
The Verge article. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that'd be a major problem.
And in the Discord, Captain Jack has reported that it will cost $199.99, so $200 for this one. Yeah, I could see people, especially with the way. So they show the way that the I think it's. Let's see, it's. I'm not sure which picture that is. I think it's picture 3. It could be 2 though. It shows how the plug fits inside of the back of the frame. So you could technically set it up with an in-wall power switch behind it, and then the cord wouldn't hang down. But it, can also just hang down if, you're in a home that doesn't support, if you're like renting a place and you can't drill a big old hole in the wall.
That would be, you got to get the alignment exactly right.
What I'm curious about, so it doesn't, they call it a picture frame, but is it a picture frame or is it a piece of artwork that is already chosen for you?
I think the art, because Captain Jack is also saying that the covers are exchangeable. So I think it is like you buy the art cover. Yeah.
Although I'm sure I could just buy one of the art covers and cover it myself if I wanted to.
Yeah, custom. Yeah, that'll be interesting. Let's follow up with this once it's released, but this will be cool.
One other bit from Captain Jack is that if you have 2, then you can daisy chain them. And so I could imagine having left and right side of the television 2 picture frames that are then playing audio out with a stereo pair. But again, it's Sonos.
See, that's why you just gotta go to like therapy about Sonos.
Yeah, apparently. Sonos.
Just grinding your teeth at night, like, dang Sonos.
Doc, I've got so many headaches. What's going on? Let's take a quick break here before we come back with the rest of the news. Because I want to tell you about Command Line Heroes. You probably heard us talk about Command Line Heroes before. It's a podcast that shares with you the epic true tales of developers, programmers, hackers, geeks, and open source rebels who have and still are revolutionizing the technology landscape, and season 7 is out now. If you're watching, then you are gazing upon the beauty that is the Command Line Heroes website and the most recent season. So one of my favorite things about Command Line Heroes is that each season comes with its own artwork and brilliant copy that all come together to tell the stories that they have to tell. Season 7 is all about a pivotal year. The year is 1995. It was the start of the dot-com boom, but a lot of things had to come together for the internet to succeed. Meet the internet class of 95. Long before you could hop on GoDaddy to grab a domain, there was a woman you'd have to call, Elizabeth Jake Feinler. She was the keeper of all domains, and episode 1 of this season features a conversation with the woman herself, now in her 90s, about how she managed the internet and how her team needed to create the DNS. Also, web design, it took a while for that to become a career, but it did get a big boost in 95 when the Batman Forever website launched to promote the movie. It showed people what was possible on the web. This episode features pioneers like Jeffrey Zeldman, the godfather of web design, who recount the shift that forever changed the face of the web. And a new search engine happened to launch in 95 that took the world by storm. It had a number of firsts. It was a fast and advanced web crawler. It had whole page translation from a number of different languages back into English, and it had something called Flypaper. You can hear how Alta Vista was the first search engine for the 21st century. 1995 was a pivot point, the moment when the internet went from academic curiosity to global phenomenon. Command Line Heroes is hosted by developer and podcaster Saranyat Barak. And we, of course, got to check out season 7 of the show. And it's just again, it's so nice to get to listen to and hear kind of how the web was won, how the internet was made, and how it came together. Because you hear that first story of the web, of the internet being created, but what happened that took it from that sort of very nerdy, nebulous topic to this thing that people used and understood? That is what this season is all about. So you can check out all of the incredible stories from season 7 today. All you got to do, just search for Command Line Heroes anywhere you listen to podcasts. That's Command Line Heroes. Download it today. And of course, our thanks to Command Line Heroes for their support. Thanks so much. All right, let us get back to the show. Up first, let's talk a little bit about Apple. There were some security features that Apple introduced with the next version of its various operating systems at its Worldwide Developer Conference. And TechCrunch has outlined 7 new security features that are worth taking a look at.
I've got some smart home angles to all these, so let's jump right in. I think one that's super fascinating, and I'm very curious if this could apply to smart home apps, is passwordless login with iCloud keychain. Wow. But it's basically a way where you can use what's basically generated as a keypad or passkey, and you can log in with that, and it's just synced through iCloud as opposed to having to remember the password. And so this is fascinating. It like freaks me out to have something that would be synced through, especially I'd say iCloud, because it's pretty solid today, but in the past there were definitely some issues with stuff. Just like, I don't know, I'm constantly on betas, so if you just literally didn't have a password at all and the passkey wasn't accessible or something like that, I'd be freaked out. But I do think something like this could just really help with smart home devices. And we have all of the little HomeKit codes and things like that, but if it could just be synced through your system and remember it, and I mean, those are mostly for pairing, but it's still, if there's some other better way that they could do it through something like this, I'd love that, because I have like a bunch of Eve products and tons of little pieces of paper with those HomeKit codes on them. And I do actually have HomePass from Aaron Pierce, who we've talked about on the show before, but it's still just like, that's a sketchy system as opposed to something where like the developer session is moved beyond passwords. Like, we should be able to do that with the smart home too. Do you have any thoughts on that one?
No, I think that you perfectly covered how that can best be used. That's exactly anything that makes logging in easier and also more secure, especially with IoT stuff, is a great idea. So yeah, I'm interested as you continue down this list, as you sort of make the argument for how it fits into the smart home. So I am listening with my bag of popcorn.
I mean, the microphone indicator is another one that they brought to Mac OS, and so I actually, I just realized I shouldn't say this on air, but because I'm running Monterey on this machine that I'm recording on right now, I can see that my mic is in use. We might have had issues with some audio in the past week. I don't know why. It's unrelated, probably. But I noticed this while I was doing a FaceTime call too, was just the microphone indicator, and specifically in Control Center, it shows you the active mic and whether or not video effects are being used and stuff like that. So I just thought that was cool and a really good way to access what was going back to it. And I want some sort of way, maybe in the Home app and through like the HomePod tile, to show when you've been using the mic and things like that. Like, I guess this is an active thing, but in general, they've been adding like websites can track the history of when they accessed different things on the web. I feel like we totally need that for the smart home, because especially just being able to see those Siri requests and what you said and stuff that Amazon users have always had, and seems really nice just to sort of add that trust into the system. I think that's long overdue for the HomePod and Siri. HomePod Mini, I guess, since HomePod is slowly dying. Kind of, but we'll see. This one is this has nothing to do with the smart home, but the secure pace thing is really interesting. Like last year in iOS 14, Apple added transparency to the clipboard, where it would just show whether apps were accessing the clipboard anytime you used it. Or specifically, The difference was that before it was just anytime you open the app could look and see what was on your clipboard, and then it would notify you, which was a big change. And so like companies like TikTok, where it would just like constantly be looking at your clipboard, and supposedly it was like a mistake or something like that. But I don't know about that. But now basically the change is just that you have to actively hit paste, and then that's when they can see your keyboard or your clipboard. So I'm not sure what this means for stuff like Instapaper or even Apollo for Reddit, which look to see if you have a link on your clipboard when you open it. Maybe there could just be some sort of button or something like that. I'm not totally sure, but that's a useful feature, and I don't necessarily want to go that to go away. But then I think the last one that's just in general a nice thing is Unlock with Apple Watch is going to work for Siri requests. So you could do authentication, I guess is the word, with Apple Watch, especially for if you're wearing a face mask. That was like a really nice feature. And basically now that you can just like have whether or not you have your watch on will determine whether or not Siri can just run something without having to unlock your phone to do it. So that's actually been a pain sometimes. And so that would be really nice.
Yeah. I again, all of these authentication features that are constantly kind of confirming you are you and doing it in a way that doesn't require a bunch of extra steps means that folks are going to be more likely to want to use this technology because it will be convenient. And then while they're doing it for the sake of convenience, it also happens to be more secure than going passwordless or going, and by passwordless, I mean, choosing an easy password or, not setting up a password, not the future that we talk about when we talk about passwordlessness. So again, good innovations that will help people be more secure while getting to do more.
Yeah, I can't tell specifically, I guess, if this would work, the Unlock with Apple Watch thing would work if your phone was just like down on the table, or if it is specifically tied to the Face ID being obstructed like that.
I was wondering that too when I read this. I'm not 100% positive on that either. I was curious. I have not, triggered it to try and see how it works. But yeah, if you could, that'd be great.
If not, I will file feedback, which is I've been filing tons of shortcuts feedback. If you have requests for the way that things are changing in iOS 15 or anything like that, and you're in betas, it's definitely worth filing that feedback. And I'd say also just like talking about it online, because they actually do listen. And right now, even like particularly these next few weeks are like the time that they're most likely to be able to change things, because otherwise it kind of gets locked in as they go. So just putting the word out is always file your feedback if you have an issue, because it actually makes the difference. Even though sometimes they just close it and don't tell you about it, it still can. I've gotten a couple that have been fixed like a year and a half later. So it can be, you're still playing on Apple's timeline there, but it's worth doing. All right.
Let's talk about, so these hearables launched or were kind of leaked in a way. I just think it was their own method of marketing, the Beats Studio Buds. And there have been some reviews now that they're official, but the most interesting review I came across was one that happened on MacBreak Weekly earlier this week from Rene Ritchie, because he had them in hand and was talking about how he would almost prefer them to Apple's own AirPods Pro, because of the way that they fit in his ears very well. There's no stem that hangs down, but also they have a lot of the features that you get from these other devices, AirPods Pro, and they're also more universal. So they work with Android just as well as they work with iOS. And I think all of that's interesting. It made me kind of consider, given that I kept having the clicking issue and all that kind of stuff with the AirPods Pro, that these Beats Studio Buds might be worth looking at, even if, or especially because they cost a lot less money. And I'm curious, The Verge piece says, big ambition, imperfect execution. So what did they find was imperfect about the Beats Studio Buds?
I think some of the noise cancellation and stuff like that is not always. I mean, especially if you're going from AirPods Pro down to a product that's $100 cheaper, it's like you're gonna find that noise cancellation is worse, the mic is worse. It doesn't have wireless charging too. I do think it's fascinating that it has fast pair for Android, which is like the way that once you pair it up, it'll sync across your Google accounts. And so that's always something that was like a big, or at least people said it was like the major selling feature of AirPod. I mean, okay. The difference between a quick setup and then it syncing across your devices is different. And I remember people always seem to talk about it, just how quick it was to set up. And I was like, yeah, but the main thing is that it syncs across your other headphones and you don't have to repair it to another one. You just like connect to it, because that's just like the major issue with Bluetooth and not having enough connections. So you're totally right, though. It's like, especially if you are moving between even like an Android during the day and you have like an iPad or something like that, which is super common, this might be a lot better product than something like AirPods Pro.
Yep.
What you were saying too about the leak was that LeBron James was spotted wearing these. Oops! It's like the most popular player and like the symbol for the Beats brand.
There was an Olympic star who was spotted wearing them, and I think it was all part of, because another way that that Renee described it. Now I'm struggling to remember what he said. He made this great metaphor where, Beats is Apple's alt account. So
totally.
Anybody who's familiar with the term alt account knows that it's the place where, you post stuff that you don't want everybody to see, or you post stuff that's sort of experimental or stuff that's, maybe a little more racy or what have you. And Beats, that brand, Apple can do stuff there that it doesn't get to do with its main brand. And part of that, I think, I can very well see some guerrilla marketing tactics at work there. You give these two different celebrities and suddenly people are wondering, what's in LeBron James' ears? Oh, and it's a product that's not out yet. Like, all of those things come together to be kind of exciting and interesting. And so I love that comparison, that Beats is their alt account. That's such a good one.
I wonder how many people actually know that Apple owns Beats, because it's like one of those things where I remember it's like, oh, surely everybody knew that Instagram was owned by Facebook, and then they really didn't know. And that was pretty bad for a while. And then even just like now it says Instagram by Facebook when you open the app. So I bet Apple doesn't want to get to that point, but Beats is still, I mean, it's not that Apple isn't cool, like, or whatever. I mean, I don't know. It's not extremely uncool like some brands are. So, but Beats has definitely got the like cooler edge than them.
All right.
Apples and Beats.
Unless you've got a really good tie-in, ST SmartWise, I think we'll skip to the live text.
Sure.
All right, cool. So live text in the next version of iOS and iPadOS is this really cool technology that people on Android will be familiar with in some capacity, as it's a lot like Google Lens. Essentially, it will look at what's on your device and look for text that's in photos or on websites or what have you, and give you the ability to select that text. So this is great because it automatically starts, once you install iOS 15, it automatically starts looking through your photo library and kind of getting this all set up so that if I were to do a search in my photo library, it can use text in photos to help inform that and help me find those things. So if you've ever taken a photo of a sign, or you quickly took a photo of, a business card, or the first page of an instruction manual or something like that, you could easily get the text from that. Rosemary Orchard and I showed off a lot of the new features in iOS on iOS Today last week, and she demonstrated using live text during the show with a Simpsons graphic. So in it, there's this photo of Bart Simpson writing something along the lines of like, "I will not download the betas onto my main device," and over and over and over again. And she was able to select and copy and paste the text from that photo, which was at an angle and sort of slanted, and in, like a chalkboard script, and was able to get that information and pop it somewhere else. I've already found this useful. There have been a few photos where normally what I would do is if I got a message and I needed the text from the photo, I would, in the Messages app, I would tap into the place where you put text at the bottom. I don't know why I can't think of the term, and hit the button to dictate, and then I would start reading whatever it was that I needed. Then I could copy and paste it. But now all I do is just hold down on the photo, select that text, and I could paste it somewhere. So live text is pretty nifty. And then, like I said, if you're familiar with the sort of computer vision side of things that with Google Lens, then you might be familiar with this. But with Google Lens, it's more often about kind of recognizing what's in a photo or, on a web page or something like that, and using that to inform a search. Whereas this is specifically related to grabbing text from within a photo or another, a screenshot or something like that. I think it's really neat.
Yeah, specifically screenshots was how I've tested it. In the developer sessions for shortcuts, they had a slide with all of the titles of the actions on them, and I just copied and pasted it out of it instead of sitting there and retyping everything. It does have like extra characters and stuff though, and so I of course made a shortcut to go through and clean up all the text also that I just pulled out and make sure it's correct and things like that. So I had done something similar with Post-it has an app that could do basically like that document scanning and then scan the text on your Post-it note and create like a virtual version of your whole Post-it, like once you put it up on the wall and stuff like that. But now I could pretty much just take a photo of it and it'll automatically do it natively in the app and for every photo you've ever taken and stuff like that too. So I feel like it's a classic example of where Google did do it first, but like the way that this is integrated is just like completely seamless, and so you will just be able to do it at all times as opposed to like activating lens mode or something like that. So it's super potent. Yeah. But of course I do think Google's got that whole like image recognition side down a lot further, so I want to see Apple compete with them there too. It is like just being Apple's like search features as opposed to Googling something are like an understated thing that they've been adding a lot to over the last few years that I'm sure Google isn't happy about, of like just being able to go directly to this. So that's always funny.
Next, this is a really nice new feature that I think anyone will enjoy whenever they get the update, and it is proximity-based notifications. It's something that you could do if you had what are those devices called? Tile trackers and similar, where you can get notified if you leave something behind. So what I love about this is that it is all sorts of stuff. You can have it set up to where if you leave your iPhone behind and you walk away, you'll get a notification. If you leave your Mac behind and you walk away, you'll get a notification. Or any AirTag, should you leave that behind and walk away, you'll get a notification. So this can keep you from leaving behind stuff all the time, and I think it's fantastic.
I like had it turned on and first of all, just forgot about it. And so I was like, why the heck is my thing? It's like alerting me when I'm just on a walk. You can give the proximity sensor, and I think, but I got to figure it out a little bit better. Like I tried to do basically a very large area around my home, like even 10 blocks away, just because I do go on walks and I don't want it to be like, hey, you forgot your stuff when you're just like walking around the neighborhood. But definitely for your bag and I put it on my iPad also for the same reason of just like it I've noticed every time that it is like just right when you would be like, oh, and then like turn around and go get it, and like you're probably fine. So if you did leave it behind. So I think this is super great, and it just gives you that control for AirTags that I think people were missing originally from. I mean, there's still this sort of security concerns that are valid too, but of just like if it only notifies you in a day and a half later that you left the AirTag somewhere, like what's the point? It's already long gone at that point. So good update there too.
Yep, I love it, and I'm looking forward to even more proximity magic in the future from developers who will be taking advantage of the stuff that Apple has announced at WWDC. All right. Up next, we've got some more tech, lots more tech to talk about. And oops, I did the wrong thing there. Up first, let's talk about new screening technology at the airport. Who's even focused on airports right now? We're just now getting back into things. If you've ever gone to the airport, which I'm sure at least a few of you have, one of the most annoying things, if you haven't either paid, if you haven't decided to pay for, or you have not set up an appointment to, you go through TSA blah blah blah, which, as you can tell, I have never set that up because I don't even remember what it's called. Then you have to take off your shoes. That's what I'm getting at. In security, at the security checkpoint, you got to take off your shoes.
Pre-check.
You got to check your shoes to make sure. Pre-check, yes, to make sure there's nothing in them. And I don't know about you, but I don't like that. Not only because, of course I like it from the security standpoint. I don't like having to do it because I hate feet in general. And so I don't need a bunch of people's feet around me. If they're encased in shoes, that's fine. But B, it's also just very inconvenient as you're trying to throw all of your stuff into the bins as the people are saying like, move along. And then you got to take off it's all just a mess and not fun. And so they're working on some new technology that will keep you from having to take off your shoes. It is shoe scanning technology, and it was developed by the U.S. Department of Energy, Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, and it was funded by the Department of Homeland Security, of which the TSA does their stuff. So these body scanning booths are going to be improved.
It's the same company that's done all of the body scanning booths up until this point, which is like
the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory from the Department of Energy. Yeah, as Matthew's saying, they made all of we can just call it PNNL from now on, or PNNL. They made the ones that are in there now that like, and so they are improving upon that technology while they were already working on improving the body scanner itself. They were like, oh, we could do shoes too. So a pretty neat thing that it says passengers pause for about 2 seconds on a low platform where electromagnetic waves generate an image of the bottom of their shoes. So screeners can detect whether there's a hidden object that may constitute a threat.
That's fascinating. I feel like it is like 15 years later, they're like, what if we didn't make people take off their shoes? I mean, obviously this had to have been in development for a while, but it is just like, oh, what if we just take a picture of the bottom and then we could look at them and see? It's like, yeah, that might have worked a long time ago too. So it's fascinating that this took this long, but it says they'll start installing them in the next 18 months. So probably holiday season 2022 will be a lot less stinky than average, I guess, because everybody socks and shoes being off. Or I guess not socks, but
interestingly, PNNL is like their goal is to, instead of having anybody stop at all, they can just walk along a tube on their way to the airport gate or a tunnel. And while that's going on, they're fully scanned and, they don't have to stop for any screening, any pat down, any unpacking of their bags. It's especially annoying when you've got an iPad and a laptop, or there was one time where Oh, it was when I flew to Petaluma to check out Twit before I started working here. I brought my personal MacBook with me, and then my work MacBook came back with me from the trip. And so TSA back in, then I had to have the 2 bins separate for the laptops and another bin for my the rest of my stuff. And it's just like, oh, it would be really nice to just get to walk through a tunnel and then it does all the scanning automatically.
Yeah, nice. Sorry, I immediately distracted myself by looking at the next article, which is so fascinating. And just to be clear, this is like a bit of a grab bag of random type of smart tech stories that I thought were just fascinating. But this other one it's entirely different. Also, just to clarify, Honda has a new way to navigate accessibly with a device that goes on top of your shoe. And so this is just like, it's from Honda to Japan, and it is still in development, but they basically realized it almost sounds like the way that the Apple Watch gives you a little bit more intuitive navigation than you're staring down at your smartphone screen, or especially they're saying like just having to hear those audio cues is like, I miss it all the time in the car. I don't know if I'd need shoe directions in the car, but basically there's little like smart home sensor type or smart sensor things that go on each of your shoes, and then it could vibrate left or right or essentially on the front of them in order to like say that you're going straight and stuff like that. So especially for people who have like low vision or hearing issues, this kind of thing could be actually like pretty nice.
So this is for navigating while walking, right?
Yeah. Sorry, I confused it talking about driving.
Yeah, there for a second I thought it was like a remote control for a car.
No, I was just saying.
But I see.
When you go on walks with the Apple Watch, it'll just tap you 3 times to go left and 6 to go right, or maybe it's the other way. I don't remember which one. I can tell as it's happening.
It's like a muscle memory thing, but you don't.
Yeah,
I understand.
Yeah, exactly. But this is a little more clear, at least, because you got one on each shoe. So it's not always
that is really cool.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting to see, I don't know, even like a shoelace type version or something that got even smaller, or like it just being integrated into the shoe itself, or like a chip that you could stick in the sole. But definitely clever accessibility technology there too.
All right. Up next in the grab bag, how about a crystal ball dock that will magnify your Apple Watch screen so that it doesn't just seem like a tiny little nightstand screen that you can barely read. This is pretty clever. So you charge your Apple Watch in this little dock, and due to the kind of crystal on the front, it has magnification properties. So it just makes the screen look bigger so you can see what's on there. I think this is pretty clever. I do wish that the brightness of the Apple Watch wasn't as bright as it is, because I actually ended up turning this feature off because it was just too bright.
The night mode? Yeah. I tend to...
I like my room almost pure dark, so...
Yeah. I tend to bump the bedside table, and then it'll turn on. And I think even if you have... I might have it set wrong, so it takes like over a minute to turn off, and that is like, come on.
Oh, yeah, the 70 seconds, yep.
So I'm curious how much light passes through this, but at least in theory, until you touch it, it wouldn't be on. And actually, a good comment on the article is they're like, I want a version of this that projects the time onto the ceiling, because I remember when I was a kid, and like, I think like this was like my first
having one of those.
Yeah, they had it, and I was like, this is amazing, and especially because it just doesn't hit you with the light, and you can still see it. It's like, oh, that'd be so great.
Hit me with your best clock.
Nice.
They still make those. In fact, there's a whole range of them on Amazon. If you get one, don't get one that does blue light. Do one that does red light to the ceiling.
Yeah, exactly. But that would be cool if it could project your Apple Watch one. I guess that seems a little excessive, but hey, it's the smart home world. There's nothing. There's no such thing as too excessive.
Now I might have to get a projection clock just because I missed it. Oh no. Well, that could be a future pick of the week. All right, let's move on from that before I keep paying attention to it.
This next one is going to be my future pick of the week.
So tell me about this, because I've never understood this. All this ever did for me was bring me guilt and sadness. So how do you find joy in what you're about to talk about? Tell me how you find joy in it.
I mean, so we're talking about Tamagotchis, which are now this November, they're going to debut a Tamagotchi smartwatch. Yeah, exactly. Coming to a wrist near you. So it's like also a pedometer and a digital clock, but you can have the little tiny guy that you can feed and interact with and take care of and clean up. I mean, I'm sure I don't know. I remember enjoying whatever version of this kind of thing. I don't think I had specifically a Tamagotchi, but I remember like a little like taking care of some sort of animal thing or something like that. And I think it's kind of the persistent experience over time is something that's not super common with a lot of games, where like that thing interacts with the real world in some ways, like just by time. It almost like makes me think of Pokemon Go in the way that instead of this whole like virtual environment living in the screen and you turn it on and go like in and out and then it is inactive otherwise, this has like that persistency that just is like something nice and clever, and it's just like, yeah. So it's just like a tiny little joy thing, I think. And especially for people who, I mean, it's just like a smartwatch for anything, and actually having like a little game on there sounds like something that every smartwatch should have. Like, it's almost a shame there's not a Tamagotchi app for the Apple Watch, but I don't know. That's kind of nice. I'm not sure if I'm necessarily going to get one, but it's also,
you lied.
We're not sure. They're not even sure if it's going to be international, so you'd have to like ship it from Japan. But
somebody
Japanese
will.
have. Yeah, exactly.
I bet Florence Ion will ship one. We'll get one in from Japan.
Yeah, that's true.
I know she really likes Tamagotchi.
I'll look for her article on Wired. I totally use her articles all the time for the show now because she's got great pieces.
All right. If you want to try a different kind of smartwatch, then you might try a Commodore 64 themed smartwatch that will help you code with the flick of a wrist. What's happening here?
Yeah, this is fascinating. I mean, I'm just not into the tinkerer world. And so there's a smartwatch called the LilyGo TTGo T-Watch 2020. I assume that's just part of the name, but it's just a programmable smartwatch where you can add in your own fanciness. And so this guy made a custom watch face that emulates the Commodore 64's home screen. And he can even like he says like he can do typing on it. So he's like not actually... You can technically code on your watch, although you shouldn't. It's pretty much what it is. It's like just the shtick of that part being technically possible. But you could plug into a computer and then use a keyboard to type on your smartwatch. So I thought this was just fascinating. And I like Commodore 64 was entirely before my time too. So I just thought there's definitely got to be a listener out here who would go into it and make something on their own too.
That is, it's as you said, it's more about just the fact that you can do it rather than it actually being something that you want to do.
Just being able to go in and program your own smartwatch for that kind of stuff does seem like a pretty neat system in general. So that's also worth checking out. And it's all linked in the article too, from Input.
You know what's expensive?
Don't you just hate it when you have to pay for your monthly robot subscription service?
I hate when I have to buy it outright and then pay a monthly subscription service. If I had to buy my Moxie robot for $1,500 and then pay $40 to $60 a month for it, that's a lot. But I could just pay $149 a month and then I don't have to buy it. And then I can use the embodied Moxie robot. This is some very expensive robot that you can use to replace your parenting for your kids. So instead of handing over an iPad and saying, "Good luck, kid, don't shoot your eye out," you can put this robot in front of them and say, good luck, kid. Don't get your eye poked out, I guess.
Don't become a hacker.
Yeah, exactly. Don't become a hacker with that smartwatch of yours. This is the Moxie robot, and Engadget has done a review of it in the past. It says, developed by Embodied, Moxie is a companion robot made specifically for kids to play with every day. During a 15 to 25-minute session, your child can chat with Moxie, presumably also with Moxie, play some games, or read alongside it. Unlike most bots, it's not just a glorified household appliance. It can learn to recognize a child's face, creepy, and their particular learning needs, even more creepy. In many ways, Moxie brings kids one step closer to having a Star Wars, I don't know why that was hard to say, Star Wars droid of their very own. Whether it's worth the cost, Engadget has trouble deciding. I like the face of it. It's got this cool kind of projected face in this globe. And it, as they point out, it really does look a lot like a Pixar character. I'm trying to see what it says. So customers have averaged around 25 minutes of engagement every day. And then, here we go. So I believe this was Devendra Hardawar who did Devendra Hardawar did the review. And so he said, when I first turned it on, Moxie dramatically woke itself up and performed a self-driven systems check. It says normally they would slowly unlock new experiences and chat paths by interacting with it over time. So that's kind of cool. It's a little choose your own adventure. But in the interest of seeing how a mature Moxie platform performs, I leapfrogged that step with some help from Embodied. So Embodied worked with them to let it go through. It says, when it asked me about the day, it would follow my every word with its eyes. If I said I went to the park, it would mention that it loved going there as well. If I mentioned having an apple as a snack, Moxie was quick to say that it's one of its favorites. And if I mentioned something it wasn't familiar with, like a lamb gyro, it would just say it's never heard of that before. Moxie has no chance of passing the Turing test, as it always felt like talking to a machine. But Devendra Hardawar was surprised by how natural the conversations flowed. It was a little bit more organic than talking to the Echo. So, yeah. Again, really interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think particularly so this week is that is a subscription service as opposed to paying for the entire $1,500 robot thing up front. And I just thought of this could be really good for kids who get sick, because maybe you don't want to get this thing long term, or maybe just as a test. But it's if you're stuck in your bed for a month or something like that, renting this and then having a little companion thing that could read to you and stuff like that seems pretty good. And they're it's actually decently impressive with how it's clearly still a computer, but it was a decently natural conversation. So it's kind of fascinating. And again, I feel like this is just, there's actually robots that you can rent to interact with your kid of course they mentioned Jibo in here a couple times, of the one that sang the
Rest in peace
song for you as it died slowly, which was really dramatic. So it's impossible not to reference that in a story like this, but maybe that subscription service thing is what keeps these kinds of businesses around. So if it's not that many people are probably going to drop $1,500 to over $2,000 by the time you get the subscription service. So I bet this is a way to make this technology actually feasible as a product. So interesting. We'll see.
Now I want to rent one. But I bet there's
you want to the office.
Yeah, I bet you have to rent it for a while, though.
Yeah, that's true.
Play with my dogs. Henry and Mizzy can read to it. All right. It's almost Amazon Prime Day. And so that means that there are lots of deals that are going to take place on Amazon Prime Day. And the warning always is to be aware of how Amazon Prime Day is often about clearing out the inventory, and that many of the deals are not that great. But there will be some deals that people are keeping their eyes on, and editorial companies especially are keeping their eyes on. And Forbes has its preview of Amazon Prime Day for the best kind of Amazon device deals that are available.
Yeah, I mean, that's just been the trend over time, is that eventually it just kind of became like really big discounts on Amazon stuff. But I think that's just what's fascinating this year in particular is I almost want to warn people more than normal that if you're not buying something that has Thread or stuff that could work with Matter in the future, I think it is maybe not the time to buy. Like you were kind of saying the same thing, but just more specifically than ever, there is like a new standard coming. And if you're trying to like invest in it all for the long run, you might not be making a wise investment at that moment. But I guess always just worth checking out and seeing, especially one thing as a video creator is SD cards always go on sale. And that's always really nice because they can get really expensive and then you can get like terabytes of it for like a third the price or something. So I'm going to be doing that for sure. Did you see this new level lock? It's very interesting.
I love that it doesn't cost as much because that's the one thing about the level lock. It makes sense. So for folks who don't know about the level lock is this very clever smart lock that is kind of what you want out of a smart lock. It can do all of the magic that it does without being a huge wart on your door. And so it's very, very compact and does all of the mechanics within the actual lock space that you're used to. And traditionally, it's been very pricey. I think, let me check, because I have one saved for whenever I'm no longer living in a rental property at some point in, I don't know how many years, but it's $329.95 for the level touch. And they have worked out a way to provide that slimmed down, slimmed down mechanism without costing you as much. This one is $249. So still quite pricey, but not as pricey as the level touch.
Yeah, especially, I will say, like, I don't think I would ever try to go up to the door to like use my finger to unlock it. Like that sounds like maybe in that realm of like, yeah, you could do that, but it just isn't natural with the way that people are used to, and maybe paying extra for that feature isn't necessarily worth it. So this is kind of like, if you don't care about that, you can now save $70, $80 on it, on the overall price, and that can make a huge difference whether or not you get it or not sometimes. So I do wish, and they also opened up access to Ring, so it can like kind of work with the existing network if you're part of that now too. Especially like have the it just knows somebody's there. It can unlock for the right people and stuff like that. So that actually does sound like pretty nice. But again, you have to be interested in Ring.
We love a smart home integration.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I wish all these things had the U1 support, because that's where it starts to get really interesting, of just being able to walk up and these things unlock immediately. So
I can't wait.
Yeah.
It will be life-changing. And then speaking of locks, Wise Lock has added Google Home integration, and that's slowly rolling out. So if you are used to using your Android device with the Home app, or the iOS app through the Google Home app, soon Wise will be a part of the party. So you'll be able to unlock and lock your door using that Home app. And of course, with Google, the Google Assistant.
Yeah, exactly.
That's secondary to me, because again, I don't ever think of the voice control first. I always think of the apps, and the Google Home app used to be not great, and over time it has been updated to be right along with Apple's own Home app in terms of what you can control. So
I think that's still it blows my mind every time that you don't do that, and that we have a smart home show together, but you don't use any smart assistants,
smart voice
control your smart home. Yeah, that's like the purpose of it for me, at least. Like, I almost never want to use the apps if I can just say something, but maybe it's because you use the Siri system, so it's just stupid half the time. I think I saw I just realized I never listened to the episode, but I saw that Jim Dalrymple, who's an Apple blogger, he said that he got so mad at Siri that he literally threw his HomePod and it like hit the grill outside. He like threw it out the back door into his like barbecue. And I was like, wow.
That I'll never understand the. Never mind. I don't. I'll just say there's a certain type of person who, more often than any other type of person, is likely to punch a hole in the wall or destroy their own property in some way due to their anger. And the trend is just kind of it's just right there, right there to observe.
That's fair. Anyway, I think at least with this one, it's like, particularly, I would assume because the HomePod is just like dead, is it's like, you know what, screw this, just get rid of it and just toss it.
The HomePod is not dead though. It still works. I mean,
that version of the, if you're like, I'm done with this speaker permanently and there's no reason to like hold on to it because that one is discontinued at least. I don't know. I just thought it was funny.
I know, I'm not arguing against you, but I don't understand that. It's still an AirPlay device and it's still a HomePod. Like, I use mine every day. It's not dead. They didn't Sonos it.
That's true. I mean, also, I will say Sonos pulled back on that whole thing that they did. Like,
they did.
You might be holding on to they're just like poor strategy, but they did roll it back where they don't like automatically kill the device if you're sending it in anymore.
Yeah, that's fair. And up next, you should, I guess, as summer is rolling around and as you are uncomfortably positioned in your very hot homes, so you choose this. I think it was just last year that I finally had that awakening moment, because I do try to understand people and understand their behaviors. And I had talked before about how I did not really understand barbecue. Why would you cook something outside? What does it add? And people explained, the different reasons that they did. And one of the reason that actually stuck with me, the reason that made sense to me, and I think makes sense as a whole, is that for some people, they don't have air conditioning. And for some people, they live in places where, even with AC, they don't want to run it as much. All these different reasons why cooking outside and letting that heat go outside is much better than doing it inside. And that was the realization for me of like, oh, that is a thing that finally makes sense. That is an argument that I can get behind. So all of that is to say, we're talking about a Bluetooth connected thermometer from Govee that it will let you check in on the temperature of the meat that you are cooking so that you don't end up making those dry as a bone protein pucks that people call hamburgers that they cook on the grill.
Yeah, exactly. And I like, this is one of those times where I see it and I'm like, that's confusing. Wouldn't it melt? And then I'm like, I'm an idiot. It's like, you don't put the sensor box in the fire. It's got two little sensors that attach to it through what looks like audio cable, basically. But then those little pokes, it has two of them that they also say are nice because they're super long. And then you can just like put it into either side of the grill and measure both sides also, and then up to 230 feet away. So I thought this is just nice too. It's like you said, if you didn't have one of them and you were in that situation where you're cooking something outside, it's probably worth it. You don't have to stand over the grill the entire time. And yeah, today I'd say is an example of, if I wanted to cook dinner, I would die turning on the oven inside of the house because it is so hot outside. And we also don't have proper ventilation for our oven because it's just a terrible, we live in a 100-year-old home. So we literally have to like open our windows. That's like why I got the Eve room back in the day, was because I was worried about like us cooking inside and just not realizing that the air quality just got really bad in the house and we never actually aired it out. So it's only $30 for this kind of thing. So I feel like all of these products used to cost $80 just for basic Bluetooth functionality. Now it would be like a smart home sensor version of this that is always on or whatever that costs $80 or something like that. But if you want to go half smart with Bluetooth, you can do it. So that's pretty nice. And they've got like an app to notify you and everything. So pretty solid.
Solid. All right. That sound means it's time for the questions, answers, and thoughts segment of the show. Up first, a message from Chuck. Chuck writes, "Love Smart Tech Today." Well, Chuck, Smart Tech Today loves you. That said, that said, I'm heavily, okay, good, we're good. That said, I'm heavily into using Siri shortcuts for all sorts of things and have been using them since their inception. After the introduction of iOS/HomePod OS version 14.5, I've been experiencing all kinds of issues when running shortcuts from my HomePod minis. I'm getting Siri responses like, "Uh-oh, something's wrong. Please try again." About 50% of the time, only when run from the HomePod. Usually, simply repeating the same request will work the second or third time. I've done all the usual things like rebooting my iPhone, HomePod, router, etc. to no avail. Just wondered if this is happening for either of you. Chuck, I'm afraid to tell you that it is because of that whole deal that I don't use Siri to run anything. So Matthew, take it away.
Yeah, I was definitely having this problem as well. And so this email is a couple of weeks old because we've been out and had Rosemary on and stuff like that. But there definitely were more issues specifically around iOS 14.5. I think one of the big things that can happen is some of that disambiguation, or depending on what your shortcut is named, it can just get confused. Even in general, the HomeKit stuff, I feel like in this later iOS releases got messy, where I was having, I don't even think right now I can say the word game time to trigger my scene, because it's like, oh, I don't know what that is. What shortcut do you want to run? And I'm like, I'm not even trying to run a shortcut. This is a home scene. So that's a super common problem. I was able to clear up some of mine by not just rebooting the HomePod, but totally unpairing it and repairing it back in, which is kind of a pain in the butt. But that actually did clear up things a little bit. It's one of those things. If this keeps happening, send me another message, and I'm going to file more feedback on the Siri on the HomePod specifically, because I do think it doesn't have a whole lot of usage, because it's like a chicken and egg thing, where it's like so buggy that people don't use it, but because it's so buggy, or it's like nobody files the feedback on it because they're not even trying it and stuff like that, because it just stopped working. So I just wanted to say, you are not alone. This is super common. And I think it is. I think I was saying it before. It's like the HomePod has always had shortcuts, but the reliability of them and trigger phrases like this has been one of the biggest issues. One change in iOS 15 that is nice, just people got so confused when they took away the trigger phrases from shortcuts and just made it the name, because they almost never just said that anywhere. And so it is in iOS 15, when you're using a shortcut, as you type in the name, it'll say underneath it, like blank Siri, then the name of it, as if it's essentially constantly reminding you that the title of the shortcut is the trigger phrase. And so I'm just hoping in general that gets people to use it with Siri more, and they can fix some of these features. But yeah, reset your HomePod fully rather than just turning it off in the Home app. It's like unpair, repair, and that should help.
This is...
I don't think I put the name in. I'll grab it real quick.
A message from a stranger. Hey, while listening, you were talking about weather stations. I have a weather station where I can talk to Alexa. I love that you spelled that out. Or I can ask Siri. It's called WeatherFlow. I love mine. Also, I sent you an email about possibly helping me with my Schlage locks. They are Z-Wave. Would a home bridge work? That is from Rick, who I remember you talking about Schlage, about you asking about the Schlage locks and us kind of following up to say, hey, let's hear who's behind them, what's behind them, and whether they would work with Homebridge. So if you want to talk about WeatherFlow right quick, I will do another check-in on Homebridge to see. It looks like actually you have. I'm sorry.
Yeah, there is a Homebridge plugin for it. And I just forwarded you the earlier email from him too. But yeah, WeatherFlow is a cool weather station system. Looks like it's starts around $300 for the main one, and you can even get like $80 weather meters for agricultural purposes and or just like personal and wind meters and things like that too. So this is super interesting. It's just like I was going to say open source, but I don't necessarily know that that's true. They do have iOS and Android apps, so I'm not sure how like integrated into the smart home itself it can be, but at least in order to grab that data and track it into a system seems really nice. You know what? Let me double check. I was going to say if they have Homebridge or something like that too, maybe they could get into it, but this is interesting. Thanks for sharing with us. WeatherFlow.
That's really cool. Yeah, go ahead.
Or were you just doing the Schlage? I did not like that
I was just... you can talk about Schlage. That's fine. Just that. So this was an earlier question for anybody who didn't get that. Rick was asking, and moving away from the, and now I can't even think of what it's called because it's been so long since we talked about it. The the Wink Home Hub, what he was going to do next. And we mentioned that Homebridge could possibly be a choice there and kind of bringing everything into one flow. And so we needed to get some more information about what specifically his device was and what was the communications system behind it. And yes, there is a plugin for Homebridge. Matthew, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, plugin? It was just that he also like went through and found that they were Z-Wave, and so the Homebridge plugin makes that possible. I still haven't figured. Yeah, exactly. So it's pretty much just how to set it up and integrate that way. I'm not sure what it would look like.
It's specifically the. It's funny that in the plugin it says Z-Wave, but it is Z-Wave, and this plugin is specifically not. It's not just sort of a global Z-Wave plugin. This is a plugin specifically for the Schlage locks that use Z-Wave. So you will be able to combine those two together to use this with your Z-Wave locks. So yeah, you can check it out, and it's got, as Matthew pointed out, the instructions there for what you need to do to get it set up.
Yeah, hopefully too, if you can't like figure it out, I guess, can you leave comments on Homebridge stuff? Have you ever done anything like you can't do pull requests? It's not the same.
Yeah, it's a little bit different. I think you can
open source.
Leave an issue, but it's better to try and find the developer and reach out to them.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Just short questions, and also just if anybody else does have questions, you can always email them to us at stt@twit.tv, and we can answer your questions on air.
Yes, and we'd love to. All right, let's move on to the last segment of the show, our picks of the week. Matthew, tell us about your pick of the week.
This was a listener email also, but I just thought it was super interesting. Damien has created, it's a side project app, but he's calling it Voice in a Can, and it brings Alexa to the Apple Watch. And so it uses I'm trying not to say it, the Alexa presentation language that basically powers the UI for the Echo Show and has a little whole UI and interaction in the Apple Watch app. And so it's on sale for a couple of dollars. I'm not sure if it's actually on sale yet. but he's got a little demo online.
It's a test flight app right now.
Yeah, but I got the test flight on there, and it does work. It's like I can trigger. Yeah, it just turned off my lights earlier, and just from asking on my watch. Where'd you go? Connecting. Turn off the office. Oh, you know what? I guess that lamp isn't set into it, but the rest of my lights just turned off. What are things people ask?
Can you
Amazon's
ask
assistant?
Can you ask like what's its favorite color or something, and how does it respond?
What's your favorite color?
I like ultraviolet.
She just spoke it out loud. Oh, there's like a little UI too.
Holy moly! Okay, who is this?
Damien.
Damien, this is awesome, yeah. Damien.
Yeah, pretty cool. I'm not sure. I think he's on. He says he's on Discord through like another channel, so maybe we could interact with him there and find out more about this. But this is super interesting. It's just like I'm curious. It is kind of always questionable sometimes. Like, would this pass app review, or even like, are you like somehow breaking Amazon's
test flight
terms
review?
of service? Yeah, that's true. But pretty neat.
Starting now.
Yeah. So I can't tell, Damien. You'll have to let us know if it is available in the App Store right now, or if it's going to be soon, because I'm not seeing. Oh wait, yeah, you can buy it in the App Store. So I will download the beta to use, but I'm also just going to buy it because I want to support this. This is fantastic. So we'll include a link. I had to, Damien, I would suggest popping a couple of badges, App Store badges for Google Play or wherever this is, other than on iOS, on your main page, because it was kind of tough to find.
Yeah.
And it would be great to have that link, right away so that people can get to this, because this is very, very cool. So yeah, I'm installing the beta now, and I'll be buying this as well, because I think this is a really neat thing.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm looking forward. There's upcoming ALEXA developer conference that's going to be taking place, and I signed up for it to go as an industry analyst to check it out. And so I'm curious, what other stuff is, because I've always kind of wondered how this all, if Amazon makes these things available via the API, if there would be a way to take advantage of that with other platforms. And you've pulled it off. Awesome work.
He's going to be the only Apple Watch developer at that conference.
Yes. LOL. All right. Well, thank you, Damien, and thank you, Matthew. I did. That is a thing I
could have just laughed out loud, but
well, see, it wasn't that funny. It was just an LOL funny.
Oh, okay. I see. What's your pick of the week before I keep getting more offended?
My pick of the week is just a PSA. So it's a tip of the week.
Ooh.
So there were a couple of things that happened that made me kind of remember, we love our wireless ecosystem that we live in, where a lot of our devices are using Wi-Fi or Bluetooth or Thread or all these different technologies. And in many ways, those things are great, but sometimes they don't work how you expect them to, or they don't work as well as you expect them to. And so my PSA is just to remember that wires can be wonderful. The example that I give, there are a couple of examples that I'll give. One is with, so my partner, he has an older Xbox. I think it's the Xbox One. There's no letter after it. The thing that came after the Xbox 360, but is not the One S or X. So I think that's the Xbox One. And it has an older version of Wi-Fi on it. So when he would be playing game, or when he would go and get a new game to download, I can remember him telling me over and over again, like, oh yeah, I'll check on that tomorrow, and it'll be downloaded. And I'm going, I pay for very fast Wi-Fi, or I should say, I'm using very fast Wi-Fi because my job pays for it right now. But I don't understand why you would say that. But it's just one of these things that I processed in my head and didn't quite say out loud. And finally, I was like, oh, that's because that Xbox is using an older form of Wi-Fi. So it's not going to have that faster connection. So he ended up, there was like a really good deal where he could get 3 or 4 different games at a time for the low price of whatever. And he's like, yeah, I'll have to check on that in a week when those games are downloaded. And I'm like, hold on. So I've got a couple of really long Ethernet cords, and I was like, I'm just curious. So I plug it into my Switch and I run the cord out of my office, throw the rest of the pile over the stairs, and then flip it back around downstairs into the living room and run it over and underneath the entertainment center and plug in his Xbox. And suddenly it jumped from, 4 days or whatever to 18 minutes, 20 minutes, something like that. And he was just kind of like, what?
Yeah,
I can make
brutal.
it go this fast? And so that was one example of just like, the wires can be wonderful. And so since then, every once in a while, when it comes time to download a game, he, texts me if I'm in the office working, or if, we're in person, he'll just talk to me. Can we pull that wire back down again? So I have done that a couple of times, and it's great because then he can get his game and then he can just go back to Wi-Fi afterward. So that's one example of how Wi-Fi is wonderful. The other example
Wires are wonderful.
Wired is wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Wow. The other example is last week, my pick of the week was the Akara. Got it this time, Kevin. The Akara Hub M2. And I mentioned that it was a replacement for the original Akara Hub that I had, where it was wireless. So what it would do is it would connect to your router over Wi-Fi, and then it would also use Zigbee to communicate with the devices that were connected to it over Wi-Fi. And so you would send a message by tapping the button or with the vibration sensor, that it automatically did it. And it would send it to that bridge, which would then send it to the Wi-Fi router. And that would take time. And, it's using 2.4 gigahertz and all this other stuff. And so I finally got around to uninstalling, unpairing, unprocessing the old hub and setting up the new one. And now I'm going to hit this button. Within seconds, milliseconds, the lights turn off in my room, and then I can tap it again, and immediately they come back on. That was
faster, yeah.
That was a lot faster than the first one. So those little devices are sleepy. So it took a second for it to come on and send the message, but it is much faster. And what I found more awesome about it is that the chance that the message gets lost on its way is far less. So there are times where I will have to hit the Akara button, one or two, whatever the gesture is. I'll have to do the gesture 3 or 4 times before it actually would work. Now it's happening on the first one. Even if it takes a second like it just did, it's happening on the first one. I still am waiting for Belkin to update its firmware so that I can use a Thread remote to see how that compares to the Zigbee one. But with a wired hub, it's so much faster, more responsive, more reliable. And so, just don't forget that sometimes wires are the best thing you can do and the best connection you can get. And that even if it feels old school, the benefit that you can get from it is awesome. The only thing that I'll say is that there is a unique sort of time period of devices where it may be better to use Wi-Fi than it is Ethernet. And one example of that is the not the most recent Apple TV, but the Apple TV before. The Wi-Fi that's on it is a better version of Wi-Fi than the 10/1000 Ethernet that it uses. So plugging it in over Ethernet, if you've got a modern router, you will often get a better connection using Wi-Fi than you would using Ethernet. So
Is it the 4K one?
Not the 4K. 4K one's okay. It's the one before the 4K one.
Which is now like 5 years old, though. So it's pretty old.
Exactly. But there are people who have devices within that range. So basically, the tip there is to check what the Ethernet port is on the device or the device specs. And if you see, I think it's 10/100/1000 is usually what it's called or something like that. I know that's not super clear. But you'll see something that doesn't say gigabit, basically. And if it doesn't say gigabit and the Wi-Fi option is Wi-Fi AC, then most likely you're going to be better going with the Wi-Fi AC than going with that Ethernet. When it comes to the ability to like download stuff faster. If you're doing video conferencing or something like that, then it's still might be a better bet to go with the Ethernet. So in most cases, go ahead.
I just want to piggyback off this because I have an Ethernet cable that isn't fast enough right now. And so I even just noticed earlier today that Eero specifically says that this one up here has degraded service from what it should be getting. And they actually don't recommend
what are you using,
looking at the cable. Probably. I got somebody to install it, and I'm pretty sure they just didn't do the right one. So I literally do only get 100 megs up here, and I should be getting like 10 times as much that. So I might just buy a cable and test it just to see. What is it like? Cat
they're
8
not expensive
now, or like
Cat. Yeah. You probably don't need to go the full to Cat 8. Cat 6 or better is where you would want to be.
Why not?
Because they're way more expensive, and you don't have a router that handles the like full throughput that the Cat 8 provides. So you're like buying a Ferrari but putting unleaded gas in it. And I hate that I made that example because I'm not a car person. And so you would just be kind of wasting your money. But Cat 6 or better is going to give you the best functionality with the devices that you have without having to spend a bunch of money. And also Cat 8 they're very rigid cables because Cat 8 is also, there's the rules around how each of the twisted pairs are separated and how, I shouldn't say, each of the twisted pairs, and how there's shielding makes it so that the cable is super rigid. So it's kind of hard to move around, whereas earlier versions are not as bad. I'm sure Burke is probably, if he's listening to this, he's screaming like that there are some inaccuracies that I've had, but the larger point still stands that Cat 8 is not something that you absolutely have to have. I have a Cat 8 that runs from my network attached storage directly to my router switch, but that's because it's right next to it. And so I can just get that best connection and I don't have to worry about power kind of interfering with it. But it was after that I realized that I was kind of overspending for something that I didn't need to overspend on. So the thing is, it sounds like you want length. And if you tried to buy
it has to go
Cat 8,
outside and
if you tried to buy a Cat 8 cable that was that long, you're going to be spending a lot of money.
Mine is
Cat 6.
If it's any indication that the cable is just blue, which I feel like, I guess they make new ones now, but it's just like, I was like, these guys just grabbed one from, I don't know. I did like, I think it was Thumbtack. So it was like professional. It's like semi-professionals and not like a real crew and stuff. And so I was like, I just needed it to get done. And I was like, it was still way better than it was before. But yeah, I definitely need to get that replaced. So, and also the whole Xbox thing is just mean because I got that new Xbox and I'm still downloading all the games to it right now.
Oh my God,
I have it paused for this episode, but it's going to take like 3 more days probably. It's like 2 terabytes of games, but still it should. I should just take.
That's a lot.
But if I take it downstairs, I bet it would only take like 8 hours or something for all of it. So,
you should, after the show, most cables. It's very rare that a cable will not have all of the information printed on it. Only like branded cables. I think the Eero cable, for example, that comes with it, the Ethernet cord, I shouldn't say cable, it's a cord, doesn't have that printed on it, but almost every other cable will have a bunch of information, and one of those things will say cat, whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can check that. And if you want to let me know, because I can send you the cables that I've bought that I've had really good, good experience with for this stuff. Because I've, had to reset up everything for doing this podcasting thing from home. And I actually have so I retired a lot of my older ones that were, early cat.
I've been trying to just figure out if I should get new Eros too, but yeah, I'm not sure just because we've had connectivity issues in like the bedroom and stuff more, or like in one weird part of the house, but I'll get my Mr. Fix-It Micah answers after the show.
Yeah, I can answer a few of those questions. Not all of them, but a few of them. All right, folks, that brings us to the end of another episode of Smart Tech Today. Again, if you have questions or thoughts or apps that you want to share with us, all that kind of stuff, send those to stt@twit.tv. You can join us live by going to twit.tv/live every Thursday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 1:30 p.m. Pacific, and hang out with us there. But the best way to get the show is subscribing to it, which you do by going to twit.tv/STT and subscribing to the show in audio or video format. We love it when you join us by subscribing in, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts. I guess it's called following in Apple Podcasts now, but you get the idea. We're in all those places, and we want to hang out with you there as well. By the way, if you'd like to get all of our shows ad-free and also become part of a really awesome club, then you should check out Club Twit, twit.tv/clubtwit. For $7 a month, you get every Twit show with no ads and exclusive access to the Twit Plus bonus feed that has extra content you won't find anywhere else. And the favorite part, I think, for a lot of people, and certainly one of my favorite things, is the Club Twit Discord. You can join our Discord that's exclusive to club members and hang out with us and all of the other various members there. Again, twit.tv/clubtwit, $7 a month gets you access to all that jazz. And we would love to have you join us. Join the fun. Join the party. Twit.tv/clubtwit. Matthew Casanelli, if folks are looking to follow you online, where do they go to do so?
I'd say the best place is matthewcasanelli.com/newsletter. And I just moved my newsletter to a new service called Review that it's just like a lot more polished and less evil than MailChimp, I'm pretty sure. But it's just going to be easier to make newsletters and share more. And that's super exciting. So yeah, and I've got like a big WWDC issue out just recently that you can always check out online there too. So subscribe.
Yeah, that's awesome. You can follow me at Micah Sargent on many a social media network, or head to chihuahua.coffee, CHIHUAHUA.coffee, where I've got links to many of the places I'm most active online. I'm a little upset. I had said a long time ago that I was going to set up a unique website for chihuahua.coffee, as there was this service called Card, and it lets you kind of create a static web page that was really easy to make. And I could never, no matter what I did, I followed all the rules and did what I knew to do to get the domain set up, and none of it would work. It would never actually work. So I just changed it back. So basically, when you go to chihuahua.coffee, it's a redirect that takes you to a page on my website that is specific to the chihuahua.coffee crew. So what the link that you saw, the page that you just saw, that is what you will see. But you'll see that the URL is a little bit different. I think it's like micah.co/chihuahua coffee or something like that. But you just head to chihuahua.coffee and you'll get there. And one of these days, I'll find a service I like that just does one pages really well to use to create my little linking. Until then, and even after, we appreciate you for being a part of the show, for tuning in every week, for sending us messages and thoughts. And we will catch you next time on Smart Tech Today. Until then, it is time to say good afternoon to our smart assistants.
Goodbye, Moxie robot.
No, I can't afford you, Moxie.
Android may be just another operating system, but when you check out all about Android, you'll realize that Android's also a ton of fun. Join me, Jason Howell, and my co-hosts, Florence Ion and Ron Richards, and a whole slew of guests that we invite on the show every week. Every Tuesday, in fact, we talk about the latest Android news, hardware, apps, and we answer a ton of your Android-related questions as well. Don't miss All About Android at twit.tv.